today's video. I want to share a little bit about my induction and just my birth story. I just thought it would be fun to share, and this is like one of my favorite things to talk about because giving birth to my son is just the most amazing thing I've ever done. Let me set the scene for you. My original due date was September 8th and I ended up having my son on the 14th. So I made it to about 41 weeks pregnant and I was ready to be done. I was ready to get the baby out. I just could not be pregnant anymore, and he was pretty stubborn. He didn't really want to come out. I had had the induction scheduled for a couple weeks and I didn't want to be induced. I really wanted him to come naturally, but you just reach a point towards the end where it's like, I'm done. Like, I need to get him out. I'm so uncomfortable. I can't breathe. I can't sleep at night. I'm just like ready for him to be here. My original induction date was Friday the 13th, and I ended up actually not having him, like I said, until the 14th. The hospital that I went to was apparently very busy and they were short-staffed, and there were so many people on that Friday the 13th that were in labor, so like all of the delivery rooms were occupied, and so they couldn't call me in until they had a room available. On the 14th, they called me at like 7:30 in the morning and they were like, hey, we finally have a room ready for you. And so my husband and I got ready super fast and got our butts in the car and drove to the hospital. And I was so excited, but I was also just very nervous because I knew that I was going to be pushing a baby out, and I had been waiting for this moment my entire pregnancy. Leaving the house for the last time with like just the two of us was so crazy, and I don't think I really even fully took in the fact that we were going to be coming home with a baby. We get to the hospital, they get me checked in, and they start my IV, and they just kind of like start all of the generic stuff. And my nurse was an angel. Like, I just want to start by saying all of the nurses that I had were so kind and so sweet and just like made me feel so comfortable, because again, giving birth is kind of scary, especially for the first time when you don't really know what to expect. And they were just all so sweet, and I'm just so grateful for all of them. But the first nurse that I had, she was explaining everything to me, like even just putting the IV in my arm, she was explaining what was going into my body, and kind of explaining Pitocin to me, which if you don't know, Pitocin is what they use to pretty much put your body into labor when you're being induced. When I got to the hospital, I don't even remember, I think I was like 1.5 centimeters dilated, so really I was not very far along when it comes to dilation. The funny thing is, dilation doesn't really mean much until you're in active labor. The induction process basically started at about 8:30 in the morning, and I was on Pitocin, I mean, pretty much all day. It was actually pretty relaxing just being in the hospital for the first couple of hours. We had my in-laws there and my brother-in-law, and then we also had my mom, who was like traveling on a plane while I was being induced. So she was on her way to Utah while I was like starting the induction process. My husband and I were watching college football pretty much all morning, just kind of, you know, trying to occupy our minds, and there really wasn't much to do anyway. After the first couple of hours, I started feeling contractions, and they will kind of up your dose of Pitocin throughout the day. And once I got to like the highest dose of Pitocin that they could give me, that's when I really started feeling contractions that were just very uncomfortable, and I felt not the best. Tommy had to help me get up to use the bathroom, and we had to like unhook my like IV cord or something. I don't know what it was, but we had to unhook it from a machine so I could like wheel all of the IV stuff with me into the bathroom. And I just remember standing up and thinking I was gonna die. Like, it hurt so bad, and I don't even know how to explain what contractions feel like if you've never felt them, but for me it felt like very intense period cramps that just like were taking over my whole body, and it kind of felt like someone had a knife in my stomach and they were twisting it. After using the bathroom, Tommy was helping me get back to my bed, and I didn't want to sit down because I was so uncomfortable, but also standing was uncomfortable. So he was like, let me grab the stability ball and you can sit on that and bounce. And so he was like getting ready to go grab it. And I, in that moment, was like, I need the epidural now. And I went into this knowing I wanted an epidural, just personal preference. I know there's so many women that, you know, will give birth without any type of medication. I applaud them because wow, just even having the epidural, I was like, this is insane. I don't remember how dilated I was when I asked for it, but I was really trying to hold off until I was closer to actually pushing to get the epidural. But I'm glad I got it when I did. Like, my body definitely was telling me it's time. And so the anesthesiologist came into the room and he was amazing. Like, I really didn't feel any pain when he put the epidural in, and he was explaining everything to me and was like, okay, you're probably gonna feel a little bit of tingling in your toes, and then your body's gonna get really warm. And literally, like, as he was explaining what I would feel, I was feeling it. So it was very reassuring just knowing, like, you know, my body was doing what it was supposed to with the epidural. Within minutes, the pain that I was feeling from my contractions stopped. I could still feel the contractions, but it wasn't painful anymore, and I was able to breathe, and I was able to just like talk to my husband, and you know, I wasn't out of breath, and I just felt so much better. So I'm so grateful for that epidural to this day. Like, it truly saved me. From then on out, I felt pretty good. I definitely, like I said, I could still feel when I was having contractions, but it was just such a nice experience after getting it. I think when I was around like 6 or 7 centimeters dilated, my doctor came in and she was doing a cervical check, and she was like, okay, we're probably gonna break your water because my water hadn't broken yet. So they were like getting out this little hook tool that they use to break your water. And as they were like unpackaging the tool, she broke my water while she was checking my cervix. And she was like, well, your water's broken. And so from then on out, the process sped up so fast and everything started moving very quick. I started pushing around 8 o'clock, somewhere around there. So again, I got induced at 8:30 in the morning, and I wasn't actually pushing until 8 p.m. A new nurse had come in and she was doing practice pushes with me. And again, I couldn't feel anything at this point. Like, the epidural, ooh, my camera just almost fell. The epidural was definitely doing its job, and I didn't even know if I was really doing anything. I will say that's kind of the one downside to getting the epidural for me. I felt like I didn't really know if what I was doing was even working, or if I was even like pushing at all, because I really had no feeling in my legs. My mom had actually made it to the hospital right before I started pushing, so I was able to like say hi to her and see her before giving birth. My doctor came in, she was putting on the scrubs, and there was like a whole team of nurses that came in to get everything ready. You know, they're getting like the little incubator crib situation, I don't know what you call it, but what they use to like measure the baby and clean him up after he comes out, all of that stuff. They were getting all of that set up, and I never realized how many people it takes to like get everything set up. I wasn't even nervous at this point to push. I thought I would be terrified to push a baby out, because I had been my whole pregnancy, like waiting up until this moment. I was like, oh my God, I don't know what this is gonna be like. When my body was ready to get the baby out, I didn't feel any fear at all. Like, I was definitely shaking a little bit, but I think that's normal. I think that's just part of like your body's adrenaline, and you know, but I remember my teeth were chattering and I was like shaking, not because I was afraid, but just because I couldn't control my body at all. After I had done practice pushes and they had set everything up, it was finally time to start pushing. And I think it was a little after 8 by the time I actually started pushing. And I do remember I was able to feel the contractions, so I knew when I needed to start pushing. But again, I didn't feel any type of pain when I was pushing. And my doctor actually kind of had to tell me when to like push more, or if I was doing something good enough to where the baby was making progress coming out. So yeah, it was definitely kind of crazy experiencing that. But in total, I pushed for less than an hour, and Henry was born at 9:13 p.m. on September 14th. and he weighed 8 pounds 2 ounces, and he was 19 inches long. The most amazing part of that whole day was during the final push, when he was about to come out, my doctor was like, okay, before you push, open your eyes and look down. Because the whole time I'm just like holding onto the bed rails for dear life, okay? And I'm just like squeezing my eyes shut. And she was like, open your eyes on this last push and look down. As I'm pushing for the last time, I do exactly what she says, and I look down and saw him come out. And it was like, in that moment, my body just, I can't even explain the type of relief I felt, like with him not being in my body physically anymore, but also like the emotional side of it, and knowing that my son was finally here. And when you're pregnant for 9 months, all you're thinking about is, what's my baby gonna be like? What are they gonna look like? You're just so curious. Oh my gosh, I can't even put it into words. It was crazy. But I was so happy. They basically put him right on my chest. He started crying, and hearing him cry for the first time made me start crying, and I'm gonna start crying now because just thinking about it is so insane. But I think he was on my chest for maybe like a minute, and then they took him off and they went to go get him cleaned up, and I was just sitting there like, what just happened? I swear it was an out-of-body experience when he came out of my body. Like, I think I actually was levitating. Like my soul left my body and was levitating for a minute and then came back down to earth. That's seriously what it felt like, because I don't know how to put it into words. The feeling of just knowing my baby is here, and I am also no longer pregnant, which I had been so excited about, not being pregnant anymore. I was also really scared for the aftermath of giving birth, like being stitched up, tearing, all of that kind of stuff. And I did have a 2nd-degree tear. I didn't even care that my doctor was stitching me up because I had my baby in my arms, and that's literally all that mattered. And the epidural was still doing its job, so I didn't feel anything that she was doing, and I literally just didn't look in that direction. Like, I just looked at my husband, looked at my baby, and just took in the moment. I will say postpartum was a lot harder than I was expecting. The first couple of days were very brutal because your body is definitely going through it. You're recovering from just pushing a baby out. I never thought about the fact that I wouldn't be able to get up and go use the bathroom on my own. Like, I had to have a nurse help me to the bathroom 2 times before they would let me go by myself. They obviously do that for your safety and so that you're not falling over, hurting yourself. I would do it 1,000 times over for my son, and I am so excited to have another baby down the road. Not for hopefully a couple years, but I just know that that is something I'm going to look forward to the next time around, and I'm not going to be scared of labor. I think that's all I have to share. So I'm going to go get Henry up from his nap because he's awake. If I have any other details or anything else I feel like sharing, maybe on the postpartum side of things, I'll do a video on that. But I really tried to condense this birth story. There were a lot of details I left out that I could have given in this video, but I don't want to make it 30 minutes long. And make sure to subscribe, because I will definitely be posting more videos about being a first-time mom and things that I have been experiencing. So if you want to follow along for that, make sure you are subscribed. That's all I have to say. I'll see you in my next video.